Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into something that sounds like it came from a real estate brochure. President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill. And yes, that's actually the name of a piece of legislation. Because apparently when you're good at branding luxury condos, you just apply the same marketing principles to tax policy. Before we get started, this analysis is based on research from multiple sources, including the Congressional Budget Office, the White House's own documentation, reports from CBS News, Reuters, NPR, CNN, NBC News, PBS NewsHour, and analysis from the Tax Foundation and Yale's Budget Lab. These sources provide both supportive and critical perspectives on the legislation. Now, let's talk about this bill that has a name so aggressively alliterative it makes Crooked Hillary look subtle. Speaking of branding, we need to acknowledge something. Donald Trump might just be the most gifted political marketer of our time. Crooked Hillary, Sleepy Joe, DeSanctimonious. The man has turned political nicknames into an art form. Whether these labels were accurate or not is beside the point. They were undeniably catchy, and they stuck like superglue to a campaign poster. And now, we have the One Big Beautiful Bill. It's got everything: alliteration, simplicity, and the kind of grandiose language that makes you think you're about to buy a timeshare, not reconstruct the federal budget. It's marketing genius wrapped in legislative packaging. The name practically demands to be said with jazz hands. So what exactly is this magnificently monikered piece of legislation? The One Big Beautiful Bill Act, let's call it OBBB for short, because even acronyms deserve some dignity, is essentially Trump's attempt to cram his entire domestic policy agenda into one massive package. Think of it as a legislative turducken. Tax cuts stuffed inside spending cuts, stuffed inside energy policy, all wrapped in a nice bow of immigration enforcement. The House version passed by exactly one vote in May of 2025, which should tell you something about how beautiful even Republicans found it. The bill extends Trump's 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which were set to expire. It eliminates taxes on tips and overtime, campaign promises that poll well regardless of their economic merit. It includes tax cuts for seniors, increases the child tax credit, and provides various business incentives. On the spending side, it cuts Medicaid, reduces food stamp programs, and eliminates various green energy tax credits that the administration charmingly refers to as green new scam credits. According to the White House, this bill will deliver $5,000 in Americans' pockets and create a blue-collar boom. They claim it's the largest deficit reduction in nearly 30 years. Hold on to that claim. We'll be coming back to it shortly. Why bundle all this together? The answer lies in a parliamentary procedure called budget reconciliation, which sounds boring but is actually quite clever. Reconciliation allows the Senate to pass budget-related legislation with a simple majority, avoiding the usual 60-vote threshold that would require Democratic support. This creates an incentive to stuff everything you want into one giant bill, like trying to fit your entire wardrobe into a carry-on bag. Sure, it technically fits, but good luck finding anything when you need it. The political motivation is clear. Republicans want to deliver on campaign promises while they have unified control of government. The political motivation is more complex. There's a genuine belief among supporters that these tax cuts will generate enough economic growth to pay for themselves. This is where things get interesting. And by interesting, I mean mathematically challenging. Let's be fair and examine what supporters love about this bill. The tax cuts are real and substantial. Middle-class families would see meaningful reductions in their tax bills. Small businesses get enhanced deductions. The elimination of taxes on tips and overtime could put real money in workers' pockets. The energy provisions promise to unleash American oil and gas production, potentially reducing energy costs. The border security funding addresses a genuine policy priority, and the Medicaid reforms, supporters argue, eliminate waste and fraud while requiring able-bodied adults to work or volunteer, a concept that pulls well across party lines. The White House projects this will boost real wages by up to $7,200 per year and add over a percentage point to annual GDP growth. If those projections are accurate, this really would be beautiful legislation. Here is where our beautiful bill starts looking like it needs some cosmetic surgery. The Congressional Budget Office, those delightful number crunchers who specialize in ruining political fantasies with their pesky arithmetic, has some sobering projections. The CBO estimates the bill would increase the deficit by $3.3 trillion over the next decade. Let me put that in perspective. That's roughly equivalent to the entire GDP of Germany, just added to our national debt. For context, our current national debt is about $36 trillion. So we're looking at roughly a 9% increase from this one piece of legislation. But wait, there's more. The Tax Foundation analysis suggests that even with economic growth factored in, the bill would still worsen deficits significantly. And here's the truly ugly part. 6 Nobel Prize-winning economists wrote a letter stating that the bill could increase the national debt by over $5 trillion if its provisions are made permanent, which, let's be honest, tax cuts usually are. Yale's Budget Lab produced perhaps the most sobering analysis. Their modeling suggests that while the bill provides a short-term economic boost through 2027, the long-term effects are decidedly less beautiful. By 2054, they project GDP would actually be 3% smaller than it would have been without the bill. Why? Because all that debt crowds out private investment. Interest rates rise as the government competes with private borrowers for capital. By 2054, they project the 10-year Treasury yield would be 1.2 percentage points higher than without the bill. The debt-to-GDP ratio could reach 183%, a level that makes Greece's debt crisis look like a mild case of overspending at Target. It's like taking out a massive loan to buy a sports car. Sure, you look good in it for a few years, but eventually, those payments are going to hurt. One of the uglier aspects involves healthcare cuts. The bill would reduce Medicaid coverage, with the CBO estimating 11 million more Americans would be without health insurance by 2034. That number could rise to 16 million when you factor in related changes to ACA marketplace subsidies. The bill also requires Medicaid recipients to pay higher co-payments, up to $35 for specialist visits. Studies consistently show that when low-income people have to pay more for health care, they simply use less health care. Whether that's a feature or a bug depends on your perspective, but it's certainly not beautiful for people who can't afford medical care. Perhaps nothing illustrates the bill's ugliness better than Elon Musk's reaction. Musk, who spent months working in the Trump administration cutting government waste through Doge, called the bill a disgusting abomination. This is a man who regularly posts about efficiency and fiscal responsibility. And he looked at Trump's signature legislation and essentially said, "Thanks, I hate it." Musk's criticism highlights a fundamental tension. You can't simultaneously cut government waste and explode the deficit with tax cuts. It's like trying to lose weight by exercising more while eating an entire cheesecake. The math just doesn't work. The bill's journey through Congress has been anything but beautiful. It passed the House by one vote, with some Republicans openly expressing concern. In the Senate, deficit hawks like Rand Paul and Ron Johnson have raised objections. The legislation is so controversial that some senators are demanding significant changes before they'll support it. This creates a legislative nightmare scenario. Any changes the Senate makes must go back to the House, where the bill already barely passed. It's like trying to perform surgery on a patient who's already bleeding out. Perhaps the ugliest aspect of the bill is the precedent it sets. Republicans are essentially arguing that extending existing tax cuts shouldn't count as increasing the deficit because, well, they're existing tax cuts. This accounting gimmick makes the bill appear less expensive than it actually is. As deficit reduction advocate Maya McGinnis noted, this sets a terrible precedent. If Republicans can claim that extending tax cuts is free, what's to stop Democrats from using the same logic to extend spending increases? It's a fiscal accounting trick that could haunt future budgets for decades. Look, political rhetoric aside, there are legitimate arguments for tax cuts stimulating economic growth, and there are legitimate arguments for reducing government spending. The ugly truth about the big, beautiful bill is that it does the first while claiming to do the second, when the actual numbers suggest it does neither effectively. The bill's supporters argue that economic growth will offset the deficit increases. The bill's critics point to decades of evidence suggesting that tax cuts rarely pay for themselves through increased growth. Both sides have data to support their positions, but the ugly reality is that we're essentially conducting a massive economic experiment with the full faith and credit of the United States. So, is the one big beautiful bill actually beautiful or irredeemably ugly? Like most things in politics, it depends on your priorities and your time horizon. If you're a middle-class taxpayer who wants to keep more of your paycheck in the short term, the bill probably looks pretty beautiful. If you're worried about leaving future generations with an unsustainable debt burden, it looks considerably uglier. If you believe tax cuts always generate enough growth to pay for themselves, the bill's gorgeous. If you think fiscal responsibility matters, it's hideous. What's not debatable is that President Trump has once again demonstrated his mastery of political branding. Whether you love or hate this legislation, you'll remember its name. And in politics, being memorable is half the battle. The one big beautiful bill might not be beautiful for America's fiscal future, but it's certainly a beautiful example of how to name legislation. And honestly, in our current political environment, maybe that's the best we can hope for. Bills that sound better than they actually are. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments whether you think this bill is more beautiful or ugly. And don't forget to subscribe for more analysis of legislation with unnecessarily dramatic names.